excited to have you all here. We have a highly accomplished team of industry experts from various areas who are going to provide their insight into the opportunities in mobile services. The way the whole session is organized is we are, after the intro, we will have a presentation by each panelist for like 10 minutes each. So please make sure at the end of 10 minutes start clapping, just in case they go overboard. So we should thank them so that we can give the opportunity to the other panelists. And then towards the end, then we'll have I'll have a couple of questions around some of the hottest themes in this in the mobile services area, and then we'll open it to the questions. We have a mic there, so at the end, so please come over there, and if you have any questions, so get ready with all the exciting questions as they will be covering, and you'll get a very holistic overview of the whole landscape. So with that, let me have the panel introduce themselves from left. Shall
sure. Hello everyone, my name is Shalish Shukla. I'm from Cisco Systems. I run the software and applications business unit at Cisco, which is part of the broader mobility organization and mobility thrust at Cisco.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Raj Kolamuli. I'm an investor with Intel Capital, which is the venture arm of Intel, and I invest in the mobile sector for Intel.
Hello, I'm Nash Raina. I'm founder and CEO of Plum Slice, and prior to this, I spent about 20 years on the retail side working in technology solutions with retailers.
Hi, my name is Ryan Floyd. I'm a managing director and founder of Store Ventures. I've been a venture investor for 13 years, and mobile is a big part of what I do.
Hi, good morning. I am Sanjay Dhawan, President and CEO of Symphony Teleca. We are a mid-size private company, about 6,000 plus employees worldwide, operating out of about 15 different countries, specializing in building products, providing R&D services in the mobile, social, and analytics space.
My name is Naveen Best. I'm the co-founder of Oris Technologies. I've been a serial entrepreneur in the software and infrastructure services area, and also the chair for programs at TiE Silicon Valley, which is a not-for-profit organization fostering entrepreneurship globally. In fact, we partnered with CTIE, and thanks to them for having this session over here. So with that, as you all know, mobility is core to each and every one of the trends we are seeing these days, like new mobile, big data, and cloud, etc. So whether it's the access or the devices you all are carrying, and the big data and the cloud services that basically power our applications and the experience. So mobility is at the core of it. And at the same time, mobility is also redefining network architectures and allowing both people and things, which you will hear in the presentations, to around the world to achieve a level of connectivity which is unfathomable in the non-mobile world. So no matter what happens, how the internet evolves, mobility is going to be at the core of it. So with that context, few observations. As most of you already know, there is going to be there is already explosive demand of mobile data. It's about 13-fold by the year 2017, reaching about 11.2 exabytes per month. And then you have the software platforms which have become more like walled ecosystems, like Android, Apple, and then you have BlackBerry and Windows, which I'm sure kind of will like discuss about. They're kind of going towards the other end, extinction. And then you have things like even new stuff which is Internet of Things or machine-to-machine communication, which are evolving at the same time. Software is more and more going to be delivered via cloud. So with that context in mind, so what I would like to do is invite Sanjay Dhawan, he's President and CEO of Symphony Teleca, for his presentation.
Yes. And I thought in this theme, instead of me taking a very traditional approach of discussing the vast landscape as it exists on a mobile device, let me just take a slightly different approach and talk to you about some of the new trends that we are seeing in the industry right now. So I'm going to talk a little bit about connected car as a new platform for a lot of mobile services and how to enable it and what opportunity it can provide to various different ecosystems. Next, please. I think I've already covered this, in terms of who we are. We are a R&D services company, so we work with almost all the major mobile OEM manufacturers. We're the largest developer in the Android space, independent developer in the Android space. Looking at the whole Android stack, for example, we have built almost more than 600 plus Android devices. To give you an example, company is mostly R&D company with, like I said earlier, 6,000 plus employees worldwide. Next, please. These days, when you talk to consumers, who are basically having different shapes during a day. They consume. They're at times, consuming media and entertainment on their mobile devices, or at times, basically looking at, doing their, work and enterprise applications on their mobile devices or in their environment. There is one requirement that's coming out very loud and clear, from all the consumers, which is, the ecosystem has to be more than just the mobile device that they're carrying. It has to be basically, all services that need to be delivered to all screens. All screens could be, if you're traveling, your car screen, and hence my theme about connected car. If you are in your home and looking at your television, you expect all different services available to you on your home screen, and so on and on and on. So next please. So here, what I want to share with all of you is what we are seeing in the connected car space. This is a space that's growing very rapidly, where right now we're in a phase where all the cars are getting connected. So I call it evolution phase. But the revolution that is expected here is how all the data that's being generated in a connected car, how that data will be consumed, and how new services will be further enabled once the car gets fully connected. Again, the value here is not in connecting the car. The value here is what it enables for the driver, for the other consumers who are sitting in the car, and what kind of services can get enabled. Next, please. There was some research report that I was reading. A typical car today generates almost 1.5 gigabytes of data per hour. 1.5 gigabytes of data per hour. So much data is being generated, and this data, most of it all stays within the car right now. It doesn't really leave the car. As the car gets more connected, certainly a lot of analysis that can happen. Analytics can be applied to this data, and with that we'll come, and I'll share some use cases with regards to what it enables, for various different companies, who might be, interested in playing in this ecosystem. Next, this chart here, keep building, please. This chart here, basically, talks about the opportunity. Today, we're at the very infancy stage of this opportunity that many companies are looking at. There is hundreds of billions of dollars, to be spent in this whole ecosystem. If you look at any conservative or forecasts in terms of how many cars will get connected, and hence the revenue opportunity that creates for various different companies addressing the ecosystem. Next, please. So this chart here talks about the ecosystem of a connected car. If you basically look at what it enables, obviously there's a lot of service indicators which today stay very local. Again, absolutely no reason why those service indicators need to stay local. Just think of a scenario where the car is ready for service, and all it goes and interacts with your calendar that's sitting on your cloud, and fix a service appointment for you, so that certainly those few steps that we take as consumers are all taken care of. a lot of telematics information, software updates. Today, you take your car, your dealer, and go through kind of, updating your software and so on and so forth. Everything that we as consumers, are used to in a mobile device, is, the kind of capabilities of automatic software updates and so on and so forth is coming to car. We're working on one of the announced product is, Jaguar Land Rover, 2014 model onwards, all the infotainment and connectivity software is built by our company. And some of the capabilities that are going to be enabled is going to be quite amazing, right, in terms of, what consumers can do with the car. A lot of performance data, status and usage, diagnostics. And if you look at, various different, what it does for various different ecosystem players, think of as a portion of the driving habits data, which is there which is being generated in the local car, leaves the car. Insurance companies can tailor, special programs for consumers based on that, right? From a government standpoint, today we all pay flat tax based on the value of the car, right? Tomorrow, the taxes could be kind of, tailored to based on the usage, for example, right? So many examples, again, infotainment and so on and so forth is a given in terms of, what it does, for all the consumers. Next. I thought I'll share with you a personal experience. I'm a father of a now 18-year-old son. A typical teenager. His first car a year and a half ago. Gets into a accident, and mom's very scared to kind of put him back on the road. And we decided to go and buy a car today that he drives, which basically sitting on the internet. His mom, my wife, can basically monitor where he has been last 24 hours, put curfew time on the car, put speed limits on the car, and so on and so forth. He loves his new car, hates, all these kind of, connected, car features. So all these, it has, again, very, very good integration of email and texting. You see on the previous people kind of, using their mobile phone all the time, right? Which is very, from a security and standpoint, is very risky. So all these new capabilities kind of, get enabled with, as soon as you put a vehicle relationship management system in a car, which again, most of the major manufacturers are working with companies like us. So next slide, please. This chart here basically kind of shows to realize this notion of a connected car and enable various different mobile services in the connected car, which are very location based, very much kind of takes the persona of the driver and the people who are in the car. The set of services that are available to the driver changes based on who's driving the car. So today, you can set up your seat memories based on whether you or your wife is entering the car. Tomorrow, all the apps and what those apps are configured and going to be doing for you, will be basically adjusted depending on whether you enter the car or your spouse or some other driver enters the car. So no reason why my favorite radio station from Delhi, India cannot be played here. When I enter the car versus if somebody else is driving the car, why those kind of services are not enabled, whether it comes to infotainment or other related services. So to enable this, obviously there is a lot of innovation that is taking place right now in the industry. It's going to be fairly standard to have the wireless technologies that we all use on our mobile phone, be it Wi-Fi, be it our Bluetooth is mostly there in the cars right now, but Wi-Fi and also 3G, 4G, LTE, type of connectivity. But it goes beyond that, right? The connectivity of the car to a vehicle relationship management system, which is mostly all sitting in the cloud with small pieces of that which are running inside the car as well. So that vision is being enabled right now, as the next gen of mobile services and a new set of mobile platforms kind of get rolled out, which are beyond our mobile devices. My last slide. From a future perspective, forecast is more than 90% of all cars will be connected, producing a lot of data, which selectively will leave the car more and more, and that would enable kind of next set of applications and services and enter the car. Will be enabled. Software will always be updated. A ecosystem that has a potential to create billions of dollars in revenue for various different partners participating in that. Thank you.
Our next presenter is Ryan Floyd, founder and managing partner of Stormwind.
Well, great. Well, I know I need a new car. I drive a 2000 Mercedes and it has nothing in it, so I look forward to that. In fact, I rented a car yesterday in LA, and the rental car had a better electronic system than my car did, so that's me knowing you need to get a new car. I'm going to go through at a pretty high level my deck. I've only got 7 slides, so I'll keep it somewhat short, and hopefully then I'll leave more time for questions at the end. So first, just to start on me and Storm. So we're the first or early investor in enterprise IT companies. There's this old saying, there's 2 ways to make money. You can either be really good at wasting people's time or really good at saving people time. And I would be on the end of saving people time, saying it's productive. So I'm not the right guy to talk about a lot of the consumer mobile applications, but anything really on the enterprise, and that's where I'll really focus my discussion. I've got 5 partners. We're all in Menlo Park. We're investing out of our 4th fund right now, and about 50% of our portfolio is somewhat kind of mobile related, which is why I'm here today. I spent a lot of time there. So next slide. So just at a high level, like why mobile? Why is it interesting? I know we're all here because we think it's interesting, but from a venture perspective, just to give some context why I think it's interesting for startups is the graphic on the left represents kind of the past, and the graphic on the right represents kind of the present. And what was in the past was a situation where enterprise IT really kind of controlled all of the systematic buy inside of companies. You went to IT if you needed an app, you went to IT if you wanted a new phone, you went to IT if you needed a new server, if you wanted to get an email address provisioned. Today, what's happened today is it's changed completely. Today, people buy their own phones, they bring them into the organization. People buy their own apps. If they want to, they can download it on their mobile device, or let's start off with SaaS, they can do it over the web. Consumers are really in charge of their own IT profile in a lot of companies, and it's just gaining momentum. And what's that done is it's just totally turned IT on its head. And mobile is just a huge part of it, really coupled with what's happened in the cloud. I mean, mobile today wouldn't be nearly as interesting if we didn't have the ubiquity of kind of cloud services that exist. So in my mind, they're very connected, just like with connected car. I mean, all these things are interesting because of what we can access on the web, whether it's the Internet of Things, wearable devices, and so forth. And that really, for me, kind of sets up what is happening, in the enterprise. So if you go to the next slide. So where do I really see kind of the opportunities and challenges? And these are just a couple, but we're spending a few minutes on it. So first, I'll say I think mobile is going to continue to eat the desktop market. Not only from a device standpoint, which is already obvious, but I think from a software standpoint. I'll go out on a limb and basically say anything that you can do on a mobile device in terms of workflow will dominate going forward. So everything is moving to mobile that can. There's some things like data entry. If your job is to enter Salesforce data, that's not going to really be done on mobile. But if you're a field salesperson and you're in the field trying to capture field notes, that absolutely will be done on mobile going forward. And there's apps that will be built around that sort of piece of the workflow. Anything that can be done on mobile will. Why? Because it's easy. It's ubiquitous. It's with us all the time. So you're starting to see that slowly today, but it's just going to continue to gain momentum. And I think as a consequence, the value of the desktop, the value of the laptop is going to decrease in terms of just how we use it. You can kind of think of it as a spectrum, but I think it's a very important trend. And it's really not just about the web. It's about this concept of apps. As a consequence, the back-end architecture, kind of my second point there, is often overlooked in terms of the explosion and sort of devices and what it means to what people have to think about the back-end architecture. It's very different for mobile than it is for the web. The API calls, the demands the mobile devices have, the variety of the devices that are out there. Mobile devices today are as powerful as laptops are, a year ago in terms of what you can do. They consume a lot of data, and you have to be able to support that. From APIs, from images, from performance standpoint, and so it requires a lot of thought on the back-end architecture side, where I think there's some opportunity, as well as on the UI UX, and that's not to be overlooked. I think everybody thinks when they think mobile, they think, oh, I gotta have a great UI UX. That's kind of table stakes. You gotta have that, but the back-end piece of it's also really, really critical. Part of that, I think, is APIs, so my next bullet point there. APIs is a big opportunity for companies today. Mobile, because it is so tied to the cloud, your ability to deliver services and capabilities via an API, even if it's not your app, it's really impressive. I don't know a ton about the connected car, but to be able to deliver weather data to a connected car, that's going to be done via an API. And you as the weather app don't necessarily have to be in the car. You just have to have a great API that Sanjay and his company can take advantage of. And that's really powerful. That's a great way to get your app, your technology, whatever your service out there that didn't exist a couple of years ago. That mobile is the perfect way to do that with APIs, and they're very, very lightweight. And then the final opportunity I'll say is really, I think it's a jump ball for the enterprise. I know a lot of big companies would disagree with me on that. But even if you look at Google and Apple and Samsung, I mean, they are certainly dominant in the mobile space, but it's really about the consumer. Samsung made over $9 billion in profit last quarter, focused on selling phones to the consumer. I guarantee you that's where they can continue to focus their time and effort. You think about Google and Apple, same thing. Winning the consumer, that's the big prize money. The enterprise is fairly small, it's billion-dollar markets, and it's fairly fragmented. As a consequence, they're just not spending a lot of time on it today. And as a result, there's a huge opportunity for companies that are focusing on mobile to deliver solutions into the enterprise, because it's somewhat overlooked. And the big companies that have thought about it, SAP, Microsoft, they're just not today, in my opinion, as far along as I think they need to be to win. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for startups there. When markets move really fast, that favors startups, and that's the situation we have with mobile. So as far as some of the challenges, if you're building an app and expecting to get paid for it, that's really tough. I think most of you probably have seen some of those numbers, just very, very hard. Everything's going free or in-app purchase, and even on the in-app purchase side, if you look at the metrics, most of them are games. It's tough. It's tough to get paid for a lot of these apps. So thinking through what that model is really important. Even on the advertising side, yes, mobile advertising is happening. It's happening very slowly though. The ad dollars just aren't there. I mean, MoPub just got acquired by Twitter, roughly about 100 million gross revenue. Maybe they're 10% of the market. I don't know, maybe. So 10x that, so maybe it's $1 billion. Maybe they're 20% of the market. So maybe the market's $2 billion. It's still small. It's small dollars relative to the overall ad market and ad spend. That's something to kind of think about. Android and iOS are really the winners. Raj may have a different opinion on that from Intel with Tyson. I don't know. Maybe that's controversial, but I think it's over. It's done. Android and iOS won. Sorry, Microsoft, BlackBerry. It's over. So it's okay. It's stability of the platforms, which is good. But it also means you've kind of got two essentially kind of monopolies running it, which is bad for things like HTML5. I think it's going to take longer for those standards to develop as a result. Why? Because those two companies love to have kind of proprietary platforms that you have to design against. Why not? Why make it universal if you don't have to? So that's a problem. It also is really hard for startups, I think, or small companies to work with these large companies because of owning the markets, they conclude they don't need anybody. So they want to do everything themselves. They think they can do everything themselves, and that makes it tough, and that's very challenging. It's challenging to know where they're going. It's challenging to know how to partner, and it's just overall kind of difficult to work with. And then the last point, I'll make in terms of what I find difficult as an investor is thinking about features versus products versus kind of companies. What's really hard on mobile is, kids out of high school can put together an app. Because if you design a good UI and you leverage all these APIs, the consequence of a lot of what I've said about the opportunity is you can put together apps really, really easily, really quickly. But it may not be much of a product, and it certainly may not be a company. So we see lots of interesting, great entrepreneurs that come through our doors, but unfortunately sometimes what they're focused on are just really features of something larger. And I think that's a real challenge on the mobile side. So next slide. I'm running out of time, so I'll just kind of hit just really at a high level. A couple of companies that I'm an investor in. Accelerator is a company that focuses on an enterprise development platform for building mobile applications. So it makes it really easy to build cross-platform applications in the enterprise and take advantage of APIs, analytics, and apps kind of across the organization. It's a maybe somewhat obvious trend, but they're gaining just a tremendous amount of traction as a result of having this kind of application development platform for enterprises that is open source. Mobile Iron's another good example. You can't really be mobile if they're not secure in the enterprise. Mobile Iron today is growing very, very quickly, and almost every single company today has to have some way to manage all their mobile devices. So this is an area that's kind of played out, I would say, but it sets the stage for a lot of new apps to come forward that require some kind of security. And then finally, I listed four companies here, just real quick, but Averail is another good example from a security standpoint. Having an application that allows you to distribute content to anyone, anywhere, but have control over that content is really critical. Because the problem with mobile devices are they're everywhere. And you as an enterprise, you don't have control over any of that data. So giving enterprises the ability to do that is a core piece of functionality. Again, it didn't really exist when IT was in control of everything, but mobility's kind of blown that out of the water. So,
let's give you a big round of applause.
That's Hollywood.
Yeah. All right, our next presenter is Abnesh Raina. He's founder and CEO of PlumSlice and also a veteran of a large retail company.
So I'm going to focus my 10 minutes on the retail side. So not too long ago, and I was part of those conversations where we used to be sitting and thinking about, is e-commerce going to cannibalize our store revenue? And many retailers had these conversations, and they realized that the more channels that you have, the better it is. There are more ways to engage your customer. And now, so that led to what we call multi-channel retail. So you had catalog, you had store, you had e-commerce, and mobile, and social commerce. Now what it's evolving to is omni-channel commerce. What companies are realizing is that customers need consistent experience across all these channels. And beyond consistency, they also need an interactive experience. So next slide, please. So what I'm going to focus my conversation on is basically some trends and opportunities in retail, a little bit about mobile payments and digital wallet, and then because of this evolution of omni-channel retail, what are the new challenges that retail mobile e-commerce is facing. And then we'll talk a little bit about PlumSlice and what we are doing in that space. Next slide, please. So if you just look at the top 500 retailers, these companies that sell on e-commerce, next year, more than half of 49 billion visits are expected to mobile. And what would those visits be for? It's not just for purchasing. Next slide, please. So it ranges from looking up taking product pictures, locating stores, searching for coupons, sending pictures, researching products and prices. So this is what most people do. So how many of you have walked into a store with a shopping list, whether it's on paper or on your mobile phone? How many of you have had to traverse aisles multiple times to find what you're looking for? I'm one of them too. So, and we'll get into that in a second. Next slide, please. So if you look at mobile commerce sales, and this is a trend from 2012 to 2017, there's rapid growth. Even today, very few customers, while they'll do all this research, they'll look up a store, they'll look up a product, the percentage of revenue coming from mobile, especially smartphones, is not that high as a percentage of e-commerce sales. But what this shows is it's basically increasing. Next slide, please. So, and when you combine that with tablets, it shoots up significantly. So just from 38 billion in 2013 to almost 108 billion in 2017. So when you look at these trends, mobile, especially powered by what was said earlier, cloud, is, and knowing I work with B2B and B2C retail e-commerce companies day in, day out, it's realistic. I think we all know that and we all understand that. So what kind of opportunities is that creating? Next slide, please. So we talked about going into the store. So some of this is happening now. I know one of the large retailers is currently testing a program where when you go in, you have a scanner, you attach it to your mobile phone. As you're putting your products in your shopping cart, you can scan them. So you don't have to scan them again at the checkout line. You basically go to self-service, pay for it, and you go from there. And then there is, to add to that, as you're scanning those products, think about, because now it's going in either in their system or in the cloud, now the same cross-sell and upsell that happens on the e-commerce sites, you could be doing that on the store, in the store itself. Beyond that, your shopping list, you could load it into an app, and guess what? The retailer would basically guide you, here are the 3 aisles you need to go to and not go back and forth between 10 aisles, right? So retailers are currently working on solving these problems, and I feel that beyond retailers, even for service providers, there's huge opportunity in that area. And beyond that, the omni-channel engagement we talked about, if someone, let's say you were shopping on their e-commerce site and you left something in the shopping cart, currently on the e-commerce, you go back to the e-commerce site, it gives you okay, you have this thing left. What if you walked into the stores and they give you a recommendation, hey, you have this in your shopping cart, would you like to buy it here, right? So when you think about omni-channel, the potential is huge. Next slide, please. And beyond that, I think there are, again, in terms of opportunities, in terms of suggesting alternates if you're going to the store and using mobile, consistent and accurate omni-channel product information, because most people even today that are buying using mobile, they're either buying food, drinks, or groceries. It's not expanded beyond that. You wouldn't go to the store and say, okay, I'm going to, or even without the store, I'm going to buy a furniture using my mobile. I think someday we'll get there. Next slide, please. And as this matures, something that's sort of entering the industry, I know there's several digital wallets out there, but when you think through from a maturity curve perspective, there are still a lot of concerns. While there is a lot of ease of use, and there are certain early adopters like folks in the age group below 35, PayPal users, affluent demographics, and retailers are thinking through that, not all retailers are on board. So the general, what I would say, mindset is that's still 3 to 5 years away from maturity, but retailers are sort of constantly looking at this as to where this is going to go. So what are we trying to do in this space? Since my background, again, as I mentioned earlier, is primarily retail, e-commerce, mobile. So next slide, please. So what we are looking at is 3 core problems in the retail industry. As omni-channel has grown, along with that, there are new marketplaces popping up, whether it's Etsy, Amazon, eBay, Alibaba, and now there are several industry-specific and region-specific. China has its own marketplaces. There are a few marketplaces that are popping up in India. The creation, cleanup, and flow of product information is becoming one of the key challenges for retailers. I'm sure you've heard of the see-through yoga pants, right? I'm sure you've heard of the firestorm that was on Twitter regarding the basically Target branding one of their plus sizes as Manatee Bay, and while the regular size was not. So all these challenges, plus when users search based on descriptions, how clean they are, basically the revenue is directly impacted. And we also know, in retail especially, 4 out of 5 every new products fail. And they fail because today retail incorporates customer feedback, especially even using social media, after the product is in the market. So what we are proposing is, and we're helping a few companies, there was a recent study by McKinsey as to how companies that did this manually were able to not only lower the cost of the product, but also increase revenue. So we are helping companies incorporate customer feedback a bit upstream. And most of our solution, we basically built a suite of applications to help retailers bring products, better products to market faster. And the suite of application is basically cloud-based, more collaboration-based. When I look at 7 years ago, we used to go to work and feel more productive, right? today folks come to work, at least in the retail sector, while there's a lot of cool stuff going on, you still can collaborate much better on the personal side, whether it's using LinkedIn, whether it's Twitter, whether it is Flipboard, whatever news coming up. When you get to work, while a lot of progress has been made, it's still those traditional enterprise systems, whether it's collaboration, whether it is the UI, whether it's RJ Fund, and the newer workforce, when you look at personas of what's the new workforce and what are the expectations, they're very different. So we're trying to bridge that gap between what the user expectations are, the collaboration needs of today's basically global, social, and mobile workforce. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Our Raj Kolamudi, Investment Director from Intel Capital.
Good morning and thank you. I will keep my Intel commercial very, very brief. It's focused on three areas that I'm focused on, my group's focused on. So Intel Capital is kind of a combination of both a traditional investor that's focused on financial returns, making money, and also doing investments that help Intel in the long term. And that's the key word, is long term. And the idea is to be the eyes and ears for Intel to help them identify long-term trends and be out there in the marketplace ahead of when they become big. Next slide. So we focus on a number of sectors, a lot of the obvious ones: data center, cloud, virtualization. We have a media practice. We, of course, being Intel, have a strong focus on manufacturing and labs and process technologies. We have a newly constituted group that's focused on wearables, new devices, mobile security that Ryan touched on, services, software services, open source, machine-to-machine, smartphone and tablets, new devices, and then also traditional business and PC client. Sorry. Can everybody hear me okay? Next slide, please. So really, one of the things that I think Ryan touched on, which resonated with how we think about this, is an ecosystem view, and Sanjay touched on this as well. So when we think about our investment philosophy and our investment thesis, it really is to identify and build ecosystems and help build and nurture ecosystems that enable innovation by entrepreneurs, people that are in this room. So everything we do, whether it's a data center or PC clients or mobile devices, is really around the ecosystem. So that's what that slide shows. Next. We're big, we're global. The next slide. So I wanted to touch on three areas. One is what we call perceptual computing, which touches on 3D cameras, a lot of the new stuff going on with motion sensors, for example, with the new iPhone 5S that has the M7 chip. So there's so much going on in terms of innovation, more and more stuff going into your handset, tablet, smartphone that is incredibly powerful. And you have sort of this conflicting forces where people are putting more and more stuff, more and more processing power, more and more capabilities into the smartphone and trying to make it lower power and cheaper. So we are spending a lot of time focused on 3D cameras, newer imaging, different sensors, and also new technologies for batteries. But how we interact with our devices is changing dramatically, and so we're spending a lot of time there. Obviously, it has implications for applications in healthcare, in education, in retail that Amish talked about. We have some of the pictures there are just to give you an illustration of telemedicine, healthcare, augmented reality with bigger, fancier, more sophisticated computer vision, computer imaging, retail experience, and so on and so forth. So next slide. This is one thing we've touched on, the sort of connected car concept, but everything's the idea. So Intel's, I think the new corporate mission is connect every person on Earth, right? So it's everybody's connected, everybody's access to information, level the playing field for every person on the planet, giving them access to information. And so it starts with the device, and it starts with all the other devices that we may or may not interact with are also connected. So this is a big area for us at Digital Capital, and we're focused on connected car, which we work on with companies like Sanjay's, and also a whole bunch of other areas. So next step, last step. So this is an area where I personally spend a lot of time, which is the idea of the platform that enables commerce and interaction. So there's, you see slides there that talk about the size of the market. It's growing. It's mobile transactions, collectively speaking, not just commerce, but every transaction that's done on mobile is still only 2% of all transactions in the US. So just sort of tip of the iceberg. It's a little bit higher in emerging markets because they don't have the same infrastructure that we are used to in terms of consumer finance, banking, and so on and so forth. But still very, very small in the US and most of Europe. A huge upside in terms of what needs to happen there. So you have big companies like Square, and on the left is the well-known example in Kenya, which is M-Pesa, which is almost a third of Kenya's GDP goes through M-Pesa, which is their mobile money platform, where people originally started off as sort of peer-to-peer money transfer, where people were transferring money from the city. One or more members of the family would go in the city, and how do you send money back to your family in the village? It was a non-trivial problem. And then M-Pesa was offered as a simple, works on any handset, SMS-based money transfer platform. And it's now really, like I said, a third of the GDP goes through this, done by the telecom. And that is spreading through many, many emerging markets in Africa, Southeast Asia, countries like Pakistan. It's really a big, big way of how countries that don't have the powerful financial system infrastructure we have in the US and Europe, how they're adopting mobile money, mobile payments, using the fact that everybody now has a phone. Everybody now has so anyway, so I wanted to stop there.
These numbers are US or the whole world?
That number is US.
Okay.
Thank you, Raj. So quick before, since we have a couple of minutes, announcement. One is there's a sheet being passed around. Please put your name and your email address so we can send you a thank you note and pass it back to Kelsey over there, our team member who's helping us. And then I think that's one. And second is just a quick question in the audience. How many of you are entrepreneurs in the audience? Okay. Are you guys looking for money? See, when you have a lot of money, you don't talk too much. That's why you finished this presentation very early on. So make sure you grab it. And of course, Ryan too. So, and then second, how many are IT, like mobile developers in the audience? Okay. And how many are in the IT groups looking for mobile tools and services for your enterprises? All right, thanks. So that gives an idea to the panel also for the questions. So now our last presenter is Shailesh Shukla. He is a VP and General Manager for new business unit, which is just going to make money out of software. So he's going to tell us all the great things at Cisco.
So tell you what, Naveen, since you've been very focused on 10 minutes, I'll A, start the timer, but B, I'll not use any slides.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Well, anyway, you have one more minute because you still have 2 minutes. You can have 10 minutes.
Thanks, Naveen. So, hello
Make sure you
everyone.
don't fall asleep though.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, Naveen. What he asked me to do was to focus on the service provider market. So before I get into that, service providers are just supposed to be transporting bits, right? So AT&T, Verizon, all they do is transport bits. Why are we talking about applications, right? So my main goal here would be to give you some specific ideas around how service providers play in the mobility value chain beyond simply connectivity. Okay. Second, how many of you believe Cisco, is a mobile player? Just raise your hands. Not that many. Right? Of course, Cisco is. All of you know that Cisco is the leading provider in the internet infrastructure space, and over the last 10 years has diversified very significantly. But very critically, Cisco is known for capturing market transitions, whether it's around virtualization, around storage, around cloud, around mobility. So mobility is a huge focus for Cisco. And I'm going to share with you a little bit whatever strategy is. So if I can have you walk away with two things: number one, the role of service providers and why it's important, and second, the role that Cisco is playing in the mobile ecosystem. Okay. So let me propose two specific ideas. Actually, no slides. Just stay there, right?
You got very good slides though.
I don't want to use any slides. Because I want to leave as much room as possible for discussion,
Sure.
which is where kind of the richness comes out. Okay? So as far as service providers are concerned, there are two main themes that I want to tell you. First theme is data in motion. Okay? And what this means is very specifically not data at rest. So all of the databases that capture customer information or customer relationship management information, a lot of that, or billing information, is still today primarily data that's stored in databases. So it's data at rest, if you will. It's very important. You have to analyze it, you have to correlate things, you have to figure out what is sitting in that data at rest to be able to make offers to customers. But what we believe is that the service providers such as AT&T or Verizon or Sprint or T-Mobile or others, they're actually carrying terabytes, or those of you who have heard, petabytes of data every day, right? Petabytes of data traverse a large service provider network in a given day. This is what we call as data in motion. So far, the data in motion has been ignored to a large extent because it's basically going from a user to a user, or a user to a data center, user to an application, and so on, and vice versa. But fundamentally, nobody has really tapped that data in motion concept. So what we believe is that there is a huge amount of richness in the information that's sitting in a service provider's network around the device type that you're using, the size of the screen in that device, the available bandwidth between that device and the network, congestion in the network, location of that device and the user, presence of that user, the device, and presence on an application. What applications are currently being used? Usage patterns, both historical and current, of users. There is a lot of rich information. If that rich information can be analyzed in real time, see, when you're talking about petabytes of data, it is not possible to store that information, number one. Number two, you want to be able to act upon that information in real time, to the example that you gave, Avnish, which is that you're walking into a store, you're looking for a particular product, you don't know which aisle to go to. That requires location information, that requires subscriber information, and that requires real-time analytics. And the ability to then, and there's a second thought that I'm going to give you, but it's absolutely critical to be able to analyze and utilize that data in motion, and by the way, correlate it with the data at rest. Yes, because your credit history, your usage profile, how valuable of a customer you are, what's the lifetime value of you as a customer, all of that is sitting in the data at rest. So if you can combine data in motion and data at rest and create insights, correlations that can convert into offers, now you're talking about doing something very different than just transporting bits from one place to another. Okay, so that's thought number one. Thought number two is what I call as bringing the network to the applications. See, today, when a Google or Amazon or others, or even app developers in the iOS or Android ecosystem, when they write an app, they don't really care about what's in the network. They're worried only about the end device on which the application is running, and the cloud, where the application, either the server resides or some other data resides, or some computation is taking place. So from an app developer's perspective today, it's only about the device and the cloud, the endpoint and one endpoint and the other endpoint. Everything in the middle is just a pipe. Right? What we believe is that there is a huge opportunity if the capabilities in the network can actually be exposed through APIs and brought to the application world, i.e. bring the network to the applications, you open up a huge, huge market. Okay? So now, if Fidelity is doing a financial services transaction, somebody is placing an order for $1 million, right? If Fidelity can signal to the network that, hey, this is a very important customer, make sure that you're creating a quality of service parameters that's end-to-end. This traffic cannot be blocked, it cannot be dropped, and the quality of experience for that end user dramatically increases, and there's a level of guarantee and an SLA. Now you're talking. A new application opportunity has opened up. And this is just one example, right? If you're an enterprise customer, i.e. a high-value customer, sitting in a, let's say, a football stadium, there's a Monday night football game going on, and there's obviously, there's 70,000 users in that stadium. There's congestion, but you're trying to close a deal, you're an enterprise user. If the network, which knows about who you are, knows about your flow, knows about, based on the customer profile, knows that you're an enterprise customer, can actually create a mechanism by which it can signal the network to say, make sure that the congestion in the radio piece of the in the radio piece of the network, that congestion doesn't apply to this user. Give them a free pass through the entire network. Now you're talking about creating new value creation. Okay? So this is what we call as the concept of closed loop. Okay? And the closed loop means network from which you can harvest and extract intelligence to be analyzed by a big data analytics capability, which can then be given to a policy engine, which can then program the network. So think of it as a triangle, which is a closed loop. And if you can take that closed loop and apply that hundreds of thousands of times a second in an automated fashion across the entire subscriber base, you suddenly have the network as a key enabler of new services. So this is the second sort of thought that I want to give you. And around what I just described is really the strategy that Cisco has built in mobility. And I want to share a little bit with you because I saw that there are some entrepreneurs here, both in terms of raising funding or maybe possibly looking for exits. Along with our friends in the VC business, we keep a very close eye on the startups. And what we have done is, as I said earlier, mobility is a huge focus area for Cisco. In the last 12 months, Cisco has made about 13 acquisitions, out of which 5 have been in my area. And the reason is, we believe this is the next major transformation that's happening in the industry. And that's my timer.
1 more minute.
1 more minute. So what we're doing is, so for example, in the last 11 months, we have made about $1 billion worth of acquisition in the mobility space. We've invested about $200 million of R&D OpEx, right, to build out new technology and new products. And we have partnered with a variety of organizations to create a complete ecosystem, all the way from an intelligent layer of software on top of infrastructure, to participating in growth markets such as small cell, to creating analytics engines that can correlate and analyze the data, to creating an entire ecosystem around Internet of Everything, right? So that's Cisco's strategy. We are really pleased with where things are, and we think that whether you're in an enterprise, whether you're a consumer, whether you're a service provider, mobility, along with cloud and virtualization, is the fundamental sort of thing that changes the rules of the game. And mobility is a horizontal; it applies to everything. So pleased to speak with you, and would be happy to take questions along with the panel.
So thanks to all the panelists for a great presentation and giving you a holistic view of the mobile services opportunity. So as you heard, like there are about, as you all know, there are about 6.8 billion phones worldwide in use. And in United States, in July, we had about 143.3 million people who had smartphones in use, and about 51.8% Android, and Apple 40.4%. Of course, Ryan already declared the winners. So BlackBerry has 4%, and then Microsoft Windows is 3%. So anyway, with that context in mind, what I would like to start with a theme around the opportunity, other than what we already talked about in your presentation. So I'll start with Ryan, and then Raj, and then we'll go to other panelists. So Ryan, what opportunities would you, let's say, for some of the entrepreneurs here, would you say you are interested in? And and if they are, obviously there is a mess, they could just grab you after that event to get a check. All right.
Well, just real quick, I maybe a better way for me to answer the question, talk about one of the problems specifically that I mentioned and challenges on the slide. So one of them is around ad tech. A lot of apps today need to generate revenue somehow. If you can't get people to pay for it and you don't have anything to sell inside the app, you have to serve ads against it. One of the problems with apps is you can't cookie users, and there's a lot of privacy issues and so forth. I think it's a wide open area. I mean, there's companies that are trying to solve that problem. We have come in and invest in a company called Admobius that's trying to do some work there. But the reality is, I think for a lot of opportunities, you have to be able to serve ads. And if you can't figure out the best ad to serve, and it's not as good as all the other channels, ad dollars aren't going to flow there. And I think that's where we are today. That's state of the art today. So if that problem doesn't get solved, and I really don't think Facebook has got it solved with what they're serving on their mobile devices. And I'm not sure Twitter may get it right with MoPub, but I just see there's going to be something else. There's got to be something else in order for that to be successful.
Thank you, Ryan. Raj, what is one particular theme or opportunity you're looking to invest in right now from your perspective?
Yeah, so there's a few of them. I would say very broadly, this monetization of mobile is a really interesting one. Ad tech, and I agree with Ryan. I think mobile, companies as big as Facebook are trying to figure this out and probably doing a better job than others. But I think this idea of how do you give brands, right, people who are spending the money, a way to help justify and increase their allocation of their ad dollars, ad spend to mobile. I think it's a really interesting area. And it touches areas like personalization and analytics and so on and so forth. So I think that's interesting. We're also, again, I before coming to Qatar, I spent a lot of time in emerging markets where I saw some really interesting examples of business models that aren't ad-based, but that aren't sort of pay-as-you-go based either. So we've flipped business models on increasing connectivity so that mobile services, mobile app vendors can monetize their offering. So there's a willingness to pay, there's a need for these services, but in emerging markets there isn't the infrastructure to actually monetize these services. So there's no payments, there's no advertising. So people are coming out with different models, and so I think there's some interesting opportunities there. So I'm spending a lot of time on mobile monetization, whether it's payments, advertising, alternative business models that take money from people who are willing to spend it, brands and big companies, and that are willing to invest in the subscriber being connected in a way that's not just pure, hey, pay me a subscription fee or pay I'll show some ads.
Great, thank you. So moving on to the services side, Sanjay, I know there's a great presentation on the connected car revolution and the opportunities over there. How do you see as running a large services company, product development services company for your customers? How do you see the other services companies change their business model? Because a lot of services companies are based on these large contracts for doing software development services, but more different type of services like mobile app developers, which are very short-term, small apps, versus which are not sustainable or in the long run. So how do you see the services companies need to evolve in that side for some of the entrepreneurs who are trying to build some service companies?
It's you're right. Just pure building, small building services companies around, mobile apps is not scalable. It's very first short-term kind of nature. I think the opportunities that we are basically seeing is are in what I said earlier, building the ecosystem, right? So using again just the connected car as an example, which I used earlier. Previously companies like mine or other companies would basically team up with major car manufacturers, be it Mercedes or BMW or Jaguar or others, local General Motors, etc., to build the infotainment and connectivity in the car. So this is the head-end unit that basically contains all the apps and connectivity and so on and so forth. But that would be the initially going back 3 years. Today and moving forward, it's the whole ecosystem that gets built. So it's the other side, where all the apps, the connected car is connecting to. This is the server side. All the apps, which are being serviced to the car are being hosted. Including the examples that I used and basically providing that as a managed service. So what used to be a project of building infotainment and connectivity for a car for a given model, maybe last 18 months, type of effort, 2 years suddenly is a 10-year life cycle basically. So that's the opportunity. What is also on top of that is analytics, right? So analytics services is huge. In our services space. I'll give the example of what one of the other panelists gave you, which is walking a store. You're basically looking at aisles and products and so on and so forth. Just think about so today the retailers don't really when you go into Nordstrom and you're looking for a dress or something, and you are basically touching every rack. The retailer doesn't know which all racks interested you and why you touched that rack. Think of that experience now on the internet, where every time you click on a product, right? Using the same example, you go to Nordstrom.com and you're basically looking for a dress, and you're basically clicking through 10 dresses. Nordstrom.com at that point knows what your interests are, and based on that, there is, you probably have heard of technologies like Hadoop and so on and so forth, open source databases. A lot of work is going on how to correlate all that data and make meaningful analysis and present outcomes to the consumer.
Abneesh, would you like to cite any other kind of talk about in the retail
Sure.
sector?
I think there are opportunities when you think about retail or commerce in general. I think there are opportunities that form sort of stand in two verticals. But before I answer, I've got one more question. How many of you think when you get a gift card or if you have reward points with the retailer, that's free money? No? I think we all feel a lot less guilty when we're spending that, right? So today there are applications when you're walking by the store in a mall, you'll get a coupon, right? Based on location-based services and cloud computing. But what if that was tied to your ERP systems or your intelligence systems, big data, and you said, hey, you have so many reward points, or you have an unused gift card, right? You would come and purchase this from us, right? So one opportunity is in consumer-facing apps. Now, we talked about the path, the optimal path within the store, and some people would like it. My wife wouldn't. She actually goes to the stores for a shopping experience. She wants to look around. She doesn't want to go to 3 aisles and come back, right? But there are going to be other things. So one opportunity is consumer-facing apps that generates revenue or makes it easier for consumers to do, or businesses to basically get consumers, engage consumers. But the second piece, which I think is ignored, but now companies are, even B2B companies in the commerce space that work with retailers, are realizing, is internal operations, whether it is collaborating, I talked about collaboration before, whether it's collaborating with your suppliers, whether it's collaborating with your customers during product design and development process. So that collaboration aspect, there are not just productivity gains, there's also opportunities for building customer loyalty. So I would say that there's back-end side of applications, again with cloud mobile, and mobile, as was said earlier, is an enabler of omni-channel commerce. So it's not just, doesn't stand on its own, and if it's looked like that, I think on both the verticals, there's great opportunity.
Shailesh, you had some points.
Yeah,
So I agree with both the comments here. In fact, I would like to generalize this by saying that mobile enables opportunities that link multiple value chains together. So like a retail value chain that exists, there's a service provider value chain, you can actually link them together. And I'll give you a great example. And this is something that we are actually implementing in Canada with the service provider. So it turns out, Canada is kind of cold, so there's a lot of indoor malls, very large indoor malls. And in one of those, there's the Wi-Fi in the mall is typically provided by the mall management, right? Which covers the entire area, and it's largely free, right? Now it turns out one of the service providers there did an analysis, and they found that people who watch movies between 3 and 6 p.m., there's a 70% chance that they're going to eat at a mall restaurant, right? It just so happens because people don't want to go out, they want to stay indoors and eat. So what they did was they collaborated, this service provider now is collaborating with the mall operator, saying that through our location technology, we can determine anybody who's sitting in the movie theater. So notice that it's anybody who's sitting in the movie theater doesn't have any privacy implications because not a particular individual, right? And for those people, the restaurants in that mall are ready to offer up coupons and so on to attract traffic to their restaurants. So the service provider the mobile service provider is now pushing advertisements through the Wi-Fi network owned by the mall to those people who are sitting in the theater between hours of 3 and 6 p.m., giving them specific incentives around the restaurants. And it turns out it was so successful that everybody's making money in this, right? So the restaurant is driving traffic, they're enjoying more diners. The mall operator is making lot more money because instead of just a free Wi-Fi, now they're able to tap into another sort of portion of the value chain to tap into some dollars. The service provider is happy because they are actually making money as well. So it's a very interesting sort of what I call as intersection points in value chain that mobile enables.
Thank you, Shailesh. So some of the points you brought out that takes us to the next theme, which is mobile value-added services, or VAS, as it's called in many emerging markets. Even Raj also pointed out in his presentation about like M-Pesa, like mobile payment, which is going on in a lot of emerging markets where you don't have internet access or laptops or PCs, but they're using mobile to do to take advantage of a lot of these services. So, I mean, of course, all of you know the three major ones. For example, mobile payments is supposed to rise to about 1.3 trillion over the next 5 years. More than 50, there is going to be nearly mobile handsets are going to be used for physical goods transaction by over 50%. And then, in fact, in Europe, 78% of the point of sale terminals are going to be NFC enabled, near field communication. So apart from those, so some of the value-added services were also already mentioned here. So could you put the panel kind of talk about one other service other than typical like mobile payments or mobile commerce or governance you think of, which you have seen, which no one knows of?
I mean, I'd say that at a high level, I just think one word: convenience. I think it's just a big trend there. It's kind of Uber of everything. If you can make it easier for users in whatever domain, make it easier to get into a car. Why do I carry car keys? If you can put that on a phone, it's so much more convenient. So there's just a lot of services that I think are going to come on mobile devices that are like Uber that people are just going to adopt at an incredible rate. If you look at restaurants today, people are ordering. There's a couple of restaurants that you can order on an iPad. That's going to be a big trend. 5 years from now, they're going to be all over the place. Because why? It cuts down on head count that you need in a restaurant. If you can just order on your phone or on an iPad at the table, and the food gets brought out to you, that's just so much better.
No, I think I agree. I think convenience, it's all about that, right? Use cases to talk about. For example, today you make restaurant reservations with OpenTable. When you go there and order, what if the OpenTable has, or more similar, Yelp or any other, service has your credit card information, knows this is your table. Why do you have to wait for a check to come and then sign? You get your, as you're finishing your dinner, your bill is right there on your mobile devices. You say pay and you walk out, right? you have set up how much tip you want to give, etc., etc. So the use cases are just way too many, that gets enabled with, and hence the opportunities.
So I'll just add a twist to that. There are two schools of thoughts, like a lot of them are saying, all these value-added services are being talked about for the last several years, but the two schools of thoughts are, one of them is saying that they're not really making the revenue as was projected. And then on the other side, of course, you pointed out one application that everyone is making money there. So what kind of other rest of the panelists, or you guys can chime in if you'd like, can talk about what do you think of that? What is true, meaning on the revenue side?
So I'm focused on B2B, right? It's in retail commerce space, but it's B2B. And the reason I decided to focus on that because there was a lot of effort going on the B2C side. And I spent several years in B2C working directly with the retailer. But I think one opportunity that is missed is because there is cash and flash, right? So there's a lot of flash on the consumer side, and rightly so, because again, there's a lot of consumption there. But I think even though the opportunity overall is smaller than the consumer side, it's been largely untapped. So even traditional companies now that I work with, traditional B2B companies, even non-retail, when I talk to them, even they are thinking over, even they are thinking, how do we integrate? And it's not standalone, it's what we talked about earlier. How does mobile work with the rest of their ecosystem, whether it's suppliers, customers, and enables ease of use? Like how, and businesses today are focusing very hard on how do we make it easy for our customers, even B2B, to do business with us. Because that's what they think the differentiator is going to be.
Sure. Maybe one interesting area that I believe is going to be pretty big is, so how many of you have heard of toll-free calling? Obviously, we all use 800 numbers. Right now, do you realize that 15 years, or at least 20 years ago, I would say, 20 years ago, toll-free had just started, toll-free calling for voice, okay, where it's not the calling party that pays, but it's the called party that pays, right? So exactly the same concept is actually going to be, we believe is going to be enabled and critical in the world of data. So think of it as 1-800 data or toll-free data. And the point is, and why it's relevant is like this. As you know, all of us carry our lovely smartphones or tablets, but unfortunately we have data caps, right? Which have been institutionalized over the last few years by pretty much all major operators except one, right? So there's a data cap. The problem is that when you're watching a high-def video or in general, sort of consuming rich media content, not on Wi-Fi but on 3G or 4G, you don't really know how much you're using and how quickly you're going to hit that data cap. And then you pay overages, which are pretty expensive. So what has happened is many of the premium channels, for example, ESPN or like Hulu Plus, right? What they're saying is, I want my users to consume my content at any place, anytime, without worrying about this data cap business, right? So what I'm going to do is sponsor that data usage that happens, to consume my content. So this is called sponsored data. You can also apply the same thing for advertisement-driven or transparent logo-driven. There's a whole bunch of ways in which you can accomplish this, but this is going to be a huge market. You can actually do a Google search on this. And look at ESPN, sponsoring data access. So this is going to be a huge opportunity around both entrepreneurs who can make it happen for retailers or for content owners or service providers who can make these services real.
Great. Raj, do you want to add?
No, actually, this is a great example of what I alluded to before in terms of different business models and how to increase adoption of different content and kinds of content and services. For example, this is actually a very big and growing phenomenon in emerging markets where data is very, very expensive relative to people's disposable income. And companies like as big as Facebook are trying to figure out how to get more people to adopt Facebook. So there's this idea of Facebook Zero, where they have partnerships with the operators where it's access to Facebook on a smartphone or tablet is zero rated, so you don't pay anything for that data. And there's a way to drive adoption of content. So I think in the US and Europe, we're used to sort of this idea of a bundle. We buy data, but I think in different markets that you maybe been here, it will evolve to where you're actually buying access to a particular service or a application, and you pay for that. And I think that's where it gets very interesting. So there's ways to, for entrepreneurs and companies to play in that space where they enable this different way of monetizing or billing for subscribers for that use.
Just to, one quick thing I want to add, this is actually, what Raj just said is the birth of a new industry, right? So there are operators in emerging markets that are selling data-only service, right? Why do you need voice? Because Viber or WhatsApp or Skype, right, are enabling voice, through data, right? So if all I'm buying is a $10 or some such sort of data package, I'm done. I don't need to buy anything else from the service provider, right? So that's a sort of a complete transformation of a 150-year-old industry, right? And then this notion of application-based, I'm only buying a particular application. So today in Singapore, I was in Singapore 2 months ago, and I found operators that are selling $1 per month for Facebook access. So you don't need anything else. All you need is Facebook, and you're done. Because Facebook, within that closed ecosystem, can actually provide all the other services.
That's a great example. What I would like to do is, before we open to the audience for the questions, so please line up at the mic with your questions. I want to, let's give a big round of applause to our team here. Now you'll have to give applause again. I'm going to name them. So our team here has been helping Ramesh, Andrew, Terry, Kelsey, and Brian over there taking nice video, and all those who smile, they will be there in his video. So let's give them a big round of applause. Alright, so we'll open it to the questions. Please state your name and your company or firm you represent, and speak louder, closer to the mic, please. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Georgia. I filed 4 patents in internet database area in 1999, 2000, and since 2000 I started submitting my business to this, but I have not done any yet. We are talking about wireless. Actually, it's different from wireless to wired. It's just a regular wired line. The big difference is internet to telephone system. So currently our wireless, we call wireless internet, actually it's a wireless telephone system. 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, might be 5G, still go to the internet, not the internet, the telephone system. The telephone system is a circuit switch system. Internet is a TCP IP-based connection-related data packet. So why we cannot make a move forward? For past 13 years, I have been 100 meetings in the past 13 years to ask the same question. The big drawback is we are still working on the wireless telephone system. My question for panel might be audience, what's the major progress past 13 years for wide internet, connect TCP IP-based wireless internet?
Okay, thank you. I think Shailesh would be a right person.
Maybe paraphrase the question for me.
Basically, why the internet connects through TCP/IP?
No, internet system is different from telephone system.
Right.
Telephone system is a circuit switch.
Yes.
Which send the data, the whole piece, the single piece. The broadcasting, one-way broadcasting message is protocol. Internet is a TCP/IP-based protocol. That's a connection already. TCP shaking head and IP send the data.
So what is the question?
My question is, what's the progress for wide internet, and wireless internet?
Oh, I see. I understand.
Wireless internet.
Okay, I got it.
We're talking about the wireless internet. Actually, that's a wireless telephone system.
That's a great question. I
Yeah,
understand
that's a big
exactly.
issue. That's why I'm sitting here for 30 years.
Okay, so he's going to answer. He got the question.
No, thank you. That's a great question.
Thank you.
Do you work for Cisco?
I was interviewed by Cisco a long time ago.
Okay.
Hundreds.
He's going to answer that. We can continue discussing with him later after the talk too, so we can get.
Basic question is, what's the progress on, wireless internet essentially, right? So IP in the wireless mobile world, because mobile voice and in some cases data has traditionally been circuit switch, connection oriented, just like the voice world was. So I would say that the progress is actually immense. Pretty much all the new standards, so including LTE, LTE is all IP, right? So there's no circuit switch in LTE at all. Essentially, all around the world, LTE adoption is very strong. In the US, as you know, pretty much all the major operators are on LTE, same in Western Europe. And LTE, by the way, stands for long-term evolution, which is the 4G standard in the mobile world. So it's all IP. You're good. This is the future.
Thank you. Second question, please.
Just to add to that also, I think typically when you switch on your phone or any smartphone device, you typically connect to something called a base station, right? And after you connect to the base station, until about 2.5 G, things were very circuit switched, what you call circuit switched, right? Starting 2G and all of 4G. After that connectivity, there are two different routes that your voice call takes, one route and your IP. So you are getting an IP address on your mobile device, from the wireless network. So now I think all the things that we have enjoyed in the data world with Wi-Fi and other technologies, can be done on wireless phone devices too.
Yeah, my name is Jake Jornstead. I'm from Fargo, North Dakota. Co-founded a company called Myriad Devices. We're a mobile technology company. So we're working with a basically construction equipment manufacturer and some other companies like them, helping build applications mostly on mobile. That's what we do. And what you said about what Cisco's doing from a almost like an API for the traveling data, I see that being really important because the problem we have right now with it, and I can't tell you all the details, but we're trying to figure out how to control these machines with your mobile device. And you're over LTE. You're not in near your local network. And so I feel like that's super important because for mission critical applications that people are complaining about being a big problem right now in mobile is you can't guarantee anything right now. That's a big thing. I just want to hear your thoughts on it. I'm assuming that's one of the routes you're talking about. How soon could that happen, and when can a company like ours who builds these applications take advantage of some sort of service like that to offer to customers so we can actually make those mission critical applications work?
Right. So that's a great question. Overall, if you look at this, bringing the network to the applications and having the ability to control the network through APIs that any application can write to is part of an overall industry trend called SDN, or software defined networks. So that work is ongoing. It's very early stages right now, and Cisco and a few others are driving the standards and the push toward programmable networks. I would say it will be a few years before it's available to kind of the broader ISV community. But having said that, today actually some of the things that you're talking about are happening, but they're happening as specific vertical solutions that Cisco and other companies are creating in partnership with service providers. For example, there's a fantastic vertical application for oil and gas industry, right? Because they have a lot of sensors on oil rigs and on fracking devices and so on that need to communicate some data, right? Not all of it, which is I think the point you made, Sanjay. Because some data needs to just be processed right there. Other data needs to go to the cloud for further analysis. So all of that is right now happening not as horizontal APIs, right? In the service provider world, in enterprise world, I think there are some horizontal APIs. A lot of it is happening as specific vertical industry solutions. So, okay, thank you.
I'm with Amalfi Consulting. I'm a partner there. We do strategy consulting for SOCs and IPs. And I have one question for Avnesh and one for Sanjay. I'll start with Sanjay, it's a more complicated question. How do you deal with the fragmentation in the market for the in-vehicle infotainment or just the VRM systems, given that the SOCs and the IPs in them and the operating system layer and the browser layer are moving so fast, and the connectivity standards are also moving really fast. And the life cycle of a car is 7 to 10, 15 years, and these technologies underlying that are embedded in the cars are moving so fast. How do you deal with that in your business model? For Avnesh, my question for you is, what are the barriers you are seeing for broader adoption of the kind of services you are thinking of bringing to the market? What kind of barriers, if they would remove, would allow you to be your path faster?
I'll start first. We're a services company, so the more diversification, we love it. Right? We continue working. Like they say, software is never dead, right? So it's never done. So you keep working. So I'll keep my own company interests aside to answer your question. There is, today you are right. There are a lot of silos in terms of the CRM systems, which are out there. Each manufacturer or tier one supplier into the car industry, has kind of their own proprietary systems. The software technologies are changing. That's why all these software updates and all that stuff that we're working on. But still, the mechanism is proprietary today. There are standardization efforts on that as well, that are going on. For example, we sit on the board of TiE, another kind of a board that is trying to kind of bring and trying to standardize some of these kind of subsystems, whether it's onboard or onboard services or off-board services of the car. So those, but they are still some time away before these standardization efforts will happen. And ultimately, there will be kind of some of the mobile ecosystems. I don't want to name who. You can kind of pick your favorite, or according to Ryan, there are only 2 left, right? Which will get standardized in the car itself. So think of kind of a car running iOS or Android or a QNX, or you take your pick basically. So that's happening.
On the retail side, I think there are a few things. Progress is being made, but a few things. First is, it took a while for the cloud to mature. Retailers are very, very risk averse when it comes to their customer data, especially the payment data. So and even today, especially when you think about mobile wallet, there are security concerns that need to be worked on, right? That was one. Second was the technology, the near field communication, for example. Even today, while future smartphones are going to come with that, it's not there in every smartphone today, right? So those challenges need to be worked out. And traditionally, because retailers deal with consumers, and I'll give you an example, one of even a mid-sized retailer I was with, they had 21 customers in the database, 21 million customers in the database and their credit card information. So they're very, very protective of that. So that's why I think for them, waiting for the maturity curve, and even if there's a small breach, I know there was a breach where TJ Maxx, someone outside the store, hacked into the store wireless, got onto their network through that, and got hold of all the credit card and the customer information, right? So because of these incidents, they're nervous, and most retailers are not on board yet. The third piece is, now that cloud and mobile are getting mature, things that were just ideas in the past, and they've known that someday it would be possible, today now it's practically possible to do it, right? So the next few years, especially the next 5 years, is going to be very interesting in retail.
Thank you very much, and thank you for a great session.
Okay. Hi, I'm David Frazier from Visa, and my question has nothing to do with payments, because I got just totally fascinated by this connected car thing, and he stole a lot of my questions. But I just want to ask a couple more. And I started imagining like somehow there's a hosted server on the car. Is that the case? Does the data generate? That's the massive amount of data that gets generated by the car actually land on something that we could think of, for lack of a better term, as a server on the car?
It's more today, at least, it's very peer-to-peer, kind of various different kind of apps and ecosystems or subsystems running more peer-to-peer in the car. But I can see kind of a server more from an entertainment standpoint, which is kind of getting content from off-board to on-board to store. But today it's more kind of a peer-to-peer scenario, and the server capabilities is sitting more in the cloud. Now, if the connectivity is not high speed and so on and so forth, then obviously kind of the architecture will evolve further to have some more onboard server capabilities.
And the fragmentation that he just mentioned, notwithstanding, is there sort of a favored technology or platform for this interconnected that solutions are leaning towards?
I've been doing this now, 25, 27 years. Open, the open standards always win. So you can, I think I've probably answered that, right? So I think that's what I would say we as a company are taking, and there are some very interesting stuff in next couple of years that you will see, happening in the car. So, yeah.
Well, thanks. I thought that was a panel really worth listening to.
Thank you. So we look like we're out of time, but we'll go on for 10 more minutes unless we get thrown out. Doesn't look like this doesn't. If you guys are okay, so we can cover all of you. We still have some questions. Is that okay with the panel?
Sure. Yep.
Okay, cool. Please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Frank Harrison from New York. The company I represent is a startup, MedCash Solutions, and it's a social venture. It focuses on healthcare, but it has a lot of elements to it that a lot of you have spoken about. But Ryan, I also understood a lot about your investment in enterprise development. So I'm in a challenge where I've got strong aspects of mobile wallet, regular traditional bank cards, mobile banking, wireless providers, big data, cloud generation. I mean, it goes all over the place. So I'm kind of curious to know, like, what is a starting point for investing in a startup like that? I mean, there is a social component that involves the healthcare issues that are going on right now. In many ways, there could be a marketing component to brands that we're developing deals with. But we also have an aggregator relationship with CardSpring. So it's just, it needs to be focused, but I know a lot of it is probably generated from initial investment, I guess, as an enterprise. So that's what I'm trying to understand is the best direction to choose going forward. Or do you have any advice as to what direction to choose?
So I would start with finding an investor who understands the domain that you're going after. So if you're focused on domain,
that's sort of like Google Wallet with a debit card. So, it's trying to integrate point of sale systems plus with CardSpring plus with Verizon, say.
And you talked about healthcare, right? You talked about healthcare.
Well, paying co-payments, paying prescriptions, things that insurance won't cover.
Yeah, so I think if I understand correctly, somewhere sort of in this healthcare IT space, you're trying to address optimizing or improving the efficiency of claims and co-payments, that kind of thing.
Well, not necessarily claims, it's just increasing the user experience for those people with healthcare issues. Maybe they don't have insurance, they're prescription drug users, they're chronically refilling their prescriptions, which cost a pretty penny. So it becomes a mobile payment structure, and if I'm using retailers with social responsible brands to be able to allow a lot of affinity purchases, that generates cash as a savings vehicle for future redemption. We're really looking at a healthcare solution, but not directly dealing with healthcare. It's mobile wallet and marketing aspects to it. Using technology to get it. So.
Yeah, just very briefly, so from an investor standpoint, you want to talk to somebody who, because a lot of the functionality you're using, they're enabling technology. You want to talk to an investor who gets what you're trying to do, the use case that you're trying to go after. So there's not a lot of investors who understand the healthcare business. So that's really important. So that the enabling piece, yeah, that's not where you get traction on that investment.
So we'd probably be focusing on the mobile wallet space itself. And
not the wallet itself, because wallet's an enabler. You want somebody who understands how the industry that you're going after, which is the healthcare, co-payments, that pharmacy, that area. There's actually a number of companies focused on that. I was in a few just in the last few months. But investors who understand that are different than the ones investing in mobile payments or mobile wallets. It's different,
like social investors. So it's an enterprise focus, not just one piece of the puzzle. Okay. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Scott Neto. I'm with Accenture, and I work mainly in mobility, user interface, and user experience. I've heard a lot about, I've done a lot of solutions like an omni-channel retail and also mobile payments. My question was maybe a little off topic. What trends have you seen in terms of enterprise mobility or workplace management, things of that nature?
for you.
Go ahead. I think, the enterprise today, I started with Mobile Iron. So the way I sort of see it is enterprises today are just, most of them are relatively immature in their adoption of mobile technology. They started probably with something like Mobile Iron or AirWatch is the other big competitor in the space. And you have to lock down the device, you have to have some ability to administer policy, because your users want to use an iPhone or an Android device most likely other than a BlackBerry. So you need some way to solve for that problem. Enterprises are not that, but not everyone. That's the starting point. Then the next piece comes, okay, what apps are critical that I want to roll out to my workforce? I think a good example are things that the apps that people are starting to build now outside of how you control content or other sort of security things. There's a lot of good companies around that. Apps, good examples are like insurance, like for in the field. Insurance adjusters today, they did all the paper on a clipboard, take shots with cameras, and then put it all together back at the office and spin it now. Ace Insurance with Epsilon built a field claims app that all now their claim adjusters use. It's a great example of, I think, enterprises are just now starting to roll that kind of stuff out. And that's what I meant by it's going to eat what people used to do on the desktop, now they're going to do it.
Maybe I'll just add, see, BYOD, has everybody here heard about BYOD? So that's bring your own device. That's kind of a very well accepted approach right now in enterprise world. But the problem with BYOD is that you have your personal information and applications on it, as well as enterprise applications and data. So some mechanisms to keep them separate, put the right kind of security, and have the ability to do mobile device management. These are well-established trends and also areas of opportunity.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dowd, and I'm with T-Mobile, so in many aspects I represent the conduit of all this data going up. And my key question is, beyond the obvious of strengthening the network, improving coverage and reducing congestion, what should the wireless companies be doing now to obviously, this big data you're talking about, Raj, a gig, an hour, that's a lot of data that has to somehow keep going. So what can we do to improve that?
Well, this is a great question, and as and I say we because we are very much a part of this with you. If we don't collaborate as an ecosystem and put together the right kind of technologies and solutions that enable personalization of services and a broad range of services that you've heard about here, using all the underlying sort of new technologies around big data and cloud and tapping into various parts of the various different value chains, we will be out of business, right, in 20 years or maybe faster. So, and this is already happening, right? A lot of profits for service providers come from voice. Yes. That can go away in 5 years, literally, if things proceed the way they are. So we need to figure out how do we become, an experience provider. How do we, become a personalized services provider who's integral to our home and business life, right? If we don't do that, I think all bets are off. So we can have a long conversation.
Sure. Thank you.
I don't know if you guys agree with me.
Well, thank you, and this is a great session, and I'm short, so I have to lower this. My name is Violet, Violet Low. I come from Imageware Systems. We're based in San Diego. We do biometric solution identity management with secure US borders in the airports and transportation, things like that. We have recently moved into the mobile field, of course, with identity management. That's my question here to you all. Where do you see, have you think about identity management, security in the cloud, and how do you, in the mobile, apparently it's in the cloud, and how do you think biometrics would play in that area, and where do you see are some maybe obstacles that the mass market needs to clear on that?
So maybe I'll take a first crack at it. So I think it's absolutely the way the world is going. It's biometrics and Apple's Touch ID. I don't know if some people are aware maybe of what's happening in India with universal ID called Aadhaar, which is a biometrics-based equivalent of a national ID program. And it's definitely the way the world's going. It's still early, right? There's a lot of sort of infrastructure isn't there. There's a lot of trust issues. And I just got an email from Intel IT saying, they're disabling all Touch ID on all Apple devices because Intel doesn't think it's secure enough. Right? So these are issues that will come up. Adoption will be slower in some places, faster in other places. But the whole idea of, to Ryan's point about convenience, every time having to punch in a whole bunch of numbers on your phones is a pain. And so anything that makes user life easier will get adopted. It won't be a straight linear path to adoption, but it is absolutely the way it's going. And I think one of the interesting things that I kind of touched on in my first slide in my presentation is there's so much more that's going into these phones that will be used in ways that we haven't thought about. There's the whole idea of sort of quantified self, lots of sensors in these phones that are being used for fitness applications, health applications, that measure all kinds of things that today sometimes are add-on, you add to your smartphone. And get more and more is getting incorporated into the phone. So biometrics is, I think, right along that path. So I think you're in a good position.
I think just to add to that, not just security, but just ease of use and convenience will also kind of start using sort of biometric. For example, security is one thing, whether it's your fingerprint or the camera taking a picture of you, and basically letting you use the phone. But not just voice, gesture-based, computing. So a lot of kind of video and gesture-based, so that you have the touch. If you're reading something, as your eyeballs move, you can kind of take certain actions. Or if you're not looking at the phone goes into sleep mode, for example, for power consumption. That kind of stuff. A lot of gesture-based stuff will happen.
Just a different point of view. I actually don't think on mobile devices biometrics has much of a future. I have a totally different view. I think from an application standpoint, I think it's going great places. So using a mobile phone to do biometrics, maybe, but are we going to have fingerprint sensors on phones? No. It ruins a kid. I mean, if you just look at what happened on laptops, the experiment's been run. It failed. It didn't work on laptops. I don't know why it would work on phones. The false positive rate is way too high. Even from a security standpoint, it's just having to deal with that. It's a cool technology, but it's either not secure enough for people that really want high security, or it's just not convenient. It just doesn't work. And the one time I can't get into my phone because it doesn't recognize my finger, that's the last time I use it. So it's just tough.
And to add to that, what's also happening in some of you may be aware, just like we have startups that are trying to come up with innovative technology, there are actually not individuals, there are groups of individuals that are in process of figuring out, here's the next thing that's coming, mobile wallet is one of them, how do we get through that, right? Because we hear about numbers in terms of revenue from smartphones, we don't hear about retailers never disclose. I've been there, I know a lot happens, they never disclose how much they lose to fraud every year. Why is your credit card interest so high, right? So I think those will be some of the challenges to this going forward.
I mean, where I would go if I were you guys thinking about mobile is if I want to use biometrics for a security application where that phone device, that's its single purpose, that's a great area. It's just, I was really referring to consumers, like, broad-based, this is the way I'm going to log into my phone. I don't see it going there. But, for at a bank or something, using a phone as that device that captures the biometric information, that makes total sense. That's a great use case.
Yeah, I guess we're talking about something similar. And by the way, I was late, so I didn't get all your guys' name, but I would love to have the business card if possible.
Sure. Okay.
So just, Ryan, you guys brought out very good points on this, because I was also thinking laptop, we have had that and I never used. I mean, it's like, right? So one of the things, the quote I remember, hearing all this perspective for you also, this founder of 5 Hour Energy has been very successful with a team of like 60, 70 people to build $1 billion enterprise. He was a keynote. So he said whenever anyone comes to him with a new product idea, he said he looks at 3 things. He said either it's useful, or it's entertaining, or otherwise it's useless. Just remember that in mind.
Yeah, that's very short.
So which is very good, I thought. We kind of talk about all this technology and we get totally hyped up with cloud, big data, and big data is what data you've been crunching for such a long time, right? And so we get all hyped up into all that, and we have all these great conferences. I mean, it's all our panelists know that. But remember these basic common sense things, right? Useful, entertaining, or useless.
All right. I have a use case I'd be happy to share with you, which I think is very useful.
And if it is useful and entertaining.
That is awesome.
Yes.
Then he got it.
Yes.
Then Ryan will be writing the first check.
Before I go to my question, just want to comment on her question, because we are talking about mobile applications and mobile networks, and from the mobile network side, and everybody's ignoring the SIM card. Most of the companies, in fact, are pushing us away from the SIM cards, including Apple, for example. And SIM card is a secure element that can be used with many other options, many other ways that only as it uses today. And the way that these people is pushing away is that we will not have the secure element inside of the cell phone anymore. Of course, not to the subscriber, but at least to the equipment or to the network. So,
But the carriers are to blame for that. That's the problem with SIM cards. The carriers are to blame because it's not interoperable. That's a major problem. I mean, I think the things that networks just, that if you can't figure out a way to interoperate, it's just not going to work. It's just what Sanjay said. Everything's going to move to an open standard. And if I can use a device ID, and everybody can use the same device ID, why wouldn't I use that? That's much better. Because if I have to use a SIM card, then I'm dependent on a network. What if some of my users aren't on the network? What if I have a global operation where I have users in India, I got users in the US, I got users in Europe? It doesn't work for me. It's a problem.
I agree with you. It's just I think that everybody's pushing the direction to go against the SIM card.
Yeah.
Where we should be pushing the direction to use the SIM card as a standard thing.
Well, if the carriers could figure out a way to do that, God bless you. That would be great. The carriers just have not been able to standardize anything.
The device ID can be replicated.
I'm not saying it's the most secure thing. I'm just saying the carriers have never, the history, as far as I know, have been able to cooperate on any standard. It's all been driven by vendors.
Because once they cooperate, then that Google and that thing happens in Starbucks.
Maybe. Yeah. It's just tough. It's a tough problem.
So, going back to my question, I think it goes in the same direction. Okay, I'm hearing about a mobile application from an access network in Brazil. Okay, and I'm really focused on machine to machine. We have like 300,000 units today there connected in our network, but all the time people are pushing us to reduce the cost of the connectivity. Okay, and then they are making more money on the application side, which is great for
the application guy.
Exactly.
Yeah, not for you. Yeah.
But the problem is, in the way that we are talking, even in your example of level 3 in Google, we are forgetting about the access network, and we will not be able to do anything without the access network. Okay, so despite of the fact that the MNOs need to come aside and find a solution to their problems, we need to help them. Because I'm in a strange position. I'm in the MNO, so I don't invest in antennas. I use the antennas. Okay? But still, if we don't find a way to fix this problem, no mobile applications will be worked. So how do you guys see this? I know that it's net neutrality thing and problems like this, but the way that we are doing, we are, how do you say in English? I don't know, killing the carriers, and no access.
Well, so I think you make a good point, which is that if the operators, especially those who are providing the access, have no way of making money, then a critical element of the solution goes away, right? That's kind of your point. So I would say that that's one of the reasons why we need, as an ecosystem, need to help operators make money, right? So that they can actually keep investing in the newer and newer, more bandwidth, more speed, and so on. But I think there's another interesting trend that is happening around the world.
Sorry, it's just do you see anyone who invests in 4G in the United States charging more for the 4G than the 3G network?
They do only from the standpoint of they're able to capture. Sorry.
Capping the data.
No. But he's asking, are they charging more? No. The answer is in theory no. But it does. If you had a operator who was only 3G and an operator who was providing you LTE speeds, where would you go?
I agree.
So the point is that that's a differentiation, right, that they're driving. But anyway, so coming back to your question, I think that the second area which is interesting is the notion of network sharing. Okay, as a way to pool access resources together and manage the economics across multiple service providers. So that is happening quite a bit. Both in emerging markets, places like India, but also in places like Japan, right? If you won't believe it, there are 7 MVNOs in Japan right now, right? All using somebody else's network. And then for things such as backhaul, people are actually already starting to share the network, right? Cell towers, real estate for cell towers, all of that is being shared. So a lot of that economic cost of, fixed economic cost associated with building out some of the access is going to get shared across multiple operators.
So we,
Can we, let's kind of wrap up, can we please?
Thanks, Axel. So if we go in the direction that we're seeing, all the carriers are becoming MVNOs, and someone, or maybe two guys in the country will own their own MVNOs, the networks that will be running. So still the problem continue, because then we need to negotiate with only one or two guys, and then differentiate.
So in some countries, regulatory regimes are actually going in exactly in that direction. Example, Australia, right? There's this notion called NBN, National Broadband Network. So what they've done is this, exactly to your point, this is more on the broadband side, wireline side. They said, we're going to make one company responsible for building out the entire access network, including the rural areas, okay? And they're going to make money through some government sort of subsidy and regulation and so on. And then they'll wholesale their services to everybody and anybody who is ready to provide a retail service. And that essentially indicating that access is a natural monopoly.
Let's hope they invest in the 5G.
In a similar vein,
it's coming.
I've heard that we've actually maxed out the available 4G bandwidth. So the number of phones we have is already hitting the limit if everybody tries to use the full bandwidth. Do you see that impacting the market? Do you have any solutions in the budget?
I think it's still, it could be, the congestion around 4G is happening in very specific markets, like New York and so on. But there's already, the standards are already evolving there. So there's something called LTE Advanced, which is, you can say 5G, but it's kind of 4G plus type technology. Right, there's carrier aggregation. And what that allows you to do is dramatically increase capacity and bandwidth. So there's work going on in that.
We've got a committee in Korea. Seoul's another place where congestion is a major problem. It's called AirPlug, and it does Wi-Fi offload. I think that's the future of how you deal with congestion is Wi-Fi. I think that's going to be, not to say that LTE Plus is going to happen or 5G, that'll happen too, but Wi-Fi offload, that's the easy answer. If you can offload phones onto broadband network, that's easy.
No, I agree. And then also there's small cell. So that's the other piece which is happening, which is, see today, the cells basically cover a pretty broad area. And hence they are limited by whatever is the total bandwidth needs to be shared between all the users. But there are a lot more users in a big area. So now sort of create small cells and have a network of small cells. So that's a big area of investment. In fact, we just acquired a company in that space. By the way, I didn't know you were investing in AirPlug.
Yeah, we started AirPlug. Yeah,
that's interesting.
You can do the deal later.
I just want to quickly respond to Ryan's comment that the reason SIM cards are being used for identity is because of carriers can't agree. Yes, it's true that GSMA 1 API is not successful, etc. We're a small startup and we're now able to authenticate devices based on their SIM credentials across carriers. We're getting a phenomenal amount of interest from the banking sector and had a big announcement at the Money 2020. So outside of the banking space, how do you think we could best leverage our ability to provide a service to authenticate devices based on SIM credentials across all carriers?
I think, talking to other security providers. It's a great example. We're having a third party somehow, work across, but that's exactly what needs to happen because otherwise it's not valuable to people that care about security, which are large enterprises, banks, whatever, right? So I think looking at other large mobile application users that need that level of security and trying to figure out how via an API or something you can plug in. Maybe even talking like a threat metrics. It's not microflow, but it looks at fraud and being able to help them because if they can reduce fraud, they can offer lower rate. So I can imagine a lot of different places that you might build up.
Thank you. Yeah, so we have a public service API.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'd like to recognize again our team: Ramesh, Andrew, Terry, and Kelsey, as well as Brian there. Let's give them a big round of applause. Now I would like to recognize our star team here, panelists. And let's give them